Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Christina. If you're not new here, hi, welcome back. It's great to see you. This is a pick a card reading for the week ahead. So the intention of these readings is to highlight either like a specific event that you may be experiencing this week or specific energies that you may be working with this week. So it'll play out differently for each of you. For these pick a card readings, I also pick an overall theme using the cards. So I'm going to go through that right now. The very first card that we have out is the Sap of the Moon plant, which I love. I've been waiting for this card to come out since I've been using this deck. Like, it's made a lot of appearances while I'm shuffling, but it actually hasn't come out in a reading yet. So I'm very happy to see this actually. This card is really interesting. It talks about sort of like the very deep subconscious or unconscious energies, which is really interesting. It brings in a lot of energy of dreams. So if you've been working with dream work, then I feel like that will be a really significant energy for you. If you haven't done that before, like if you haven't sort of explored your own dreamscape, I feel like this is sort of the invitation to start doing that this week. Upcoming this week, we also have the full moon in Libra on April 6th. And especially with the full moons, because if you notice here, like the words are a reflection, right? It's like a mirror image, right? So there's something here about, especially with full moons and moon energy especially, there's all of that energy of like illusions, right? Because if you think about a reflection or like the mirror image, let's say, is not the true thing or the object or it's not the truth in that way, in that it's not real, right? But it does reveal some sort of truth. And I feel like there's something here about working with that sort of moon energy or being able to identify or work with reflections or mirrors or illusions, quote unquote, with this sap of the moon plant. There is one line here from the book that said, the answer you seek is not going to come from your own intellect or from the opinions of others, but it's going to come from within, it's like a deep knowing is kind of how this is feeling. So it kind of feels like there's some sort of I want to say epiphany of something that you know already on some level, perhaps unconsciously or subconsciously, that's going to be making it up to the surface, the conscious level. And what I really love here is that, because you have the Uranus card, which I love so much. This is exactly what this sort of epiphany moment feels like. It's something that's going to feel like some sort of strike of inspiration. Sorry, the light just did some weird thing there when I was talking about that. A strike of inspiration, perhaps, right? Like some sort of sudden understanding, but it's something that is not external, but very much an internal process is how that's feeling. And then you have these two cards, the New Pearl, which talks about grit and perseverance, right? Like sticking towards something sticking with something that perhaps is a bit challenging at first, right? But it just takes patience. So if it is that you, like, perhaps you're going to, I feel like your dreams will be really important. So if you don't keep track of your dreams, I feel like this is the invitation to start doing that. Like keeping a journal beside you, so that when you wake up, you can write down what it is that you remember, including every single detail that you can, because the dream world is so symbolic and those symbols will mean specific things to each of you. But anyway, so that might be an invitation for you this week, because I feel like this Libra full moon will be especially important for whatever reason. It just feels very significant. And then at the bottom of the deck, we had Saturn, which is really interesting for these two planet cards to come out, because they are very different energies. Saturn talks about sort of discipline with the New Pearl, right? So like working steadily. It talks about lessons and structure and perhaps routine, right? So perhaps developing some sort of new routine, perhaps. And in that routine, some inspiration may be coming to you is kind of how that's feeling. So I'm going to leave it there for the overall theme. I'm going to go into the different groups now, and the timestamps will be in the description box below. All right, so I'm going to go through each individual card for the groups. So for group 1, we have the Alchemical Wedding. For group 2, we have the Red and White Rose. And for group 3, we have the Sparks of Light. So I will hold each of these up together so you can compare. So we have group 1, group 2, and group 3. Timestamps are in the description box below. Hi group 1, let's get started with your reading. This one's a really lovely one today. So I'm going to start actually at the bottom of the deck, which is the Chaos Mass Confusion, which is a really interesting bottom of the deck energy. So this one talks about sort of an overwhelm of energy. It doesn't have to be a negative thing, actually. I'm feeling very much like it's not for you, because it's kind of just bringing in a lot of energy of a lot of things are shifting and changing for you, especially in this reading. It feels very much like it's there's a lot of positive energy in your reading today. So I feel like this week is going to perhaps feel a bit perhaps chaotic, just like there's an overwhelm of energy, but I feel like all the other cards that are coming through are it's gonna be worth it for you. So we have here, first of all, the Jupiter card, which talks about expansion, which I really love because it's coming through with this energy actually of like, there's a specific area of your life that's wanting to go through an expansion. It doesn't feel like necessarily a physical kind of expansion, right? Like not like, it's not having to do with like your resources or anything practical. It feels very much, again, because the theme of this reading is very much like a dream space or astral or like spiritual or unconscious, it kind of feels like that's the area that's expanding for you. So it could be that you're diving deeper into some sort of like spiritual practice or something like that, and expanding that aspect of your life is kind of how that's feeling. And then you have here the Alchemical Wedding, which I love. I love this card so much. It talks about like levity or celebration. It's coming through just as like celebration today, or just like again, because the Mass Confusion is the bottom of the deck, it kind of feels like this is sort of the antidote or like the counterbalance to the chaos that you may be experiencing, is that this is sort of like the happiness. It could like it's coming through. Yesterday I went to a shopping mall on a busy Saturday, which I never do, but I was meeting up with a friend. So it's kind of like that energy where it's like some energy where you perhaps is very chaotic. There's just a lot of energy present, but it's like perhaps like you're meeting with someone, or like the reason why you're in this energy is for some other purpose, right? It's not because you're wanting to be in this, but it's because you're wanting to connect with perhaps another. It feels like for you in this reading, there's another. It kind of feels like this is a spiritual connection of some sort. I'm just going to leave it like that very vaguely. The Resin card, though, is interesting because it's coming through with like memories or nostalgia, right? Like it's kind of feeling like things that are preserved. Because I feel like this, again, so it could be something like something deep in your subconscious that you've been preserving, or memories or things like that. So you may be in your dream space, perhaps, experiencing like old memories or like past events or something like that. Maybe feeling a bit nostalgic. But I want to say it's in order to clear something, because the cards that you have here, which are really interesting. So these two cards came out together, the Emperor and the Eight of Cups, which is so interesting because the Emperor is very much that Saturn energy that came out in the overall theme. It's very much talking about like structure, control, being able to like stand on your own, which is very positive. I feel like for you, group 1, you are very established in this sense, right? And it could be in terms of very practical things, like you're your routines, your daily practical, very physical, real world, in quotation marks, structures are very stable. But I want to say that there's something here with the Eight of Cups about this physical structure that is perhaps causing illness of some sort, right? Because that's what this card in this deck specifically talks about, something causing illness that you are needing to detach from in some way. What's so interesting is that, like, the cards that come out under that, and I feel like that's sort of something that's like, that might be revealed to you in the deep subconscious energy, right? It's kind of something that you already know, that you know is harming you in some way, or is not good for you, or whatever, is being brought up to the surface so that you can make a change or a shift. And then you have here underneath that, my other deck, the Wanderer and Karma, because the Wanderer talks about, it's the Page of Wands. So it's talking about exploration, but it was coming through specifically as exploring a new frontier, which I feel like has to do, it feels very spiritual. However, I want to say that it's also coming through very, like, how I experience the dreamscape just generally is that, like, it's a reflection, right? It's a reflection of our physical world. So if like, say you experience something in your dreams, there's a very physical reflection of that energy that happens and plays out. It's just kind of like having to match the energies. So anyways, I feel like this is talking about that, because I'm seeing this, the way that it's coming out, like, this is your physical reality is what this is feeling like. Something in your physical reality is causing harm in some way. So if you're experiencing any sort of illness or like something to do with your very physical body, that is indicating that there's something in this situation that is not beneficial to you. And I feel like with the Wanderer, it's getting you to explore perhaps like the spiritual realm in order for you to identify what that thing is kind of how that's feeling, which is really interesting. With the Karma card, it's just talking about a rebalancing. That's just how I'm going to leave it. Something in your life is needing a rebalance is kind of how that's feeling. And then next here, which I love so much, these cards, like okay, the Lovers, Ten of Cups, the Star, and the Ace of Cups, which is just incredible to me, because if this is a love reading, which it absolutely feels like it is, some sort of new relationship, right? Exploring some sort of new relationship. It's coming in with a lot of love energy, and also like with the Star being sort of like your North Star, the direction that you should be going in. It's all of this really gorgeous energy. Like when cards come out like this, it almost like, it takes me aback, because it's like how... These are some of the most positive cards. Like, so you're leaving behind some sort of structure, a physical structure, I want to say, that's causing harm, and then stepping into this Lover's energy, which is talking about like union and emotional fulfillment and all of this like unconditional love, your North Star. Perhaps it has to do with like some sort of like purpose that you're trying to accomplish. And then here you have the Three of Lotuses and the Ace of Trees, which I love so much. The Three of Lotuses to me is this energy of like bringing more harmony into an environment or space. So it kind of feels like, especially with the Karma card, right? Something in your life having to do with the Emperor energy, so it could be played out through a person, but it doesn't have to be. It's all of that very sort of like strict Saturn energy, which is talking about like a lot of discipline or very hard lessons, perhaps. Perhaps there was a period in your life where you were learning a lot of lessons, but it's kind of like there's this moment of levity coming in, and I feel like it's feeling like a new fresh start with the Ace of Trees and the Ace of Cups also coming out. It's so lovely. And then here next after that, the Ten of Embers, which is sort of like, so if you've seen me use this deck before, the Nine of Embers is the volcano, right? This is coming through as the ash, but you notice here that there's almost this like spiritual tree, which is mirroring this physical structure. So it's kind of like, because you've put out some sort of spiritual fire, so to speak, you've put out some sort of perhaps like karmic energy, right? There's been some sort of completing of a cycle that had to do with like spiritual karma of some sort. Now you're getting this like new start in a very physical way is kind of how that's feeling, which is so incredible. And then you have here these 3 major arcanas to end off your reading. The unknown, which I love so much. It's a judgment card, right? The unknown, and then you have the spirit plane, which is the chariot in this deck. So how I'm seeing these 2 cards actually is because this chariot comes in with this energy of like actually being still, right? It's just listening and being still. Together, both of these are kind of looking like you don't have to do anything in order to like make this new start happen, because it's kind of feeling like you're with this like sort of current. The momentum of the situation is naturally bringing you into the new thing, whatever that means. And with the phoenix here, right, rising from the ashes, it's kind of feeling like this ending is occurring for you. And it could even be like a release, right? Like you're releasing something that wasn't serving in some way or whatever it is. And then there's like this bright new start that comes in, and it's almost like you can just let go because this situation is going to take itself, is kind of how this feeling. The energy is going to move you rather than you're having to move energy. It feels very much like you're just being led is what that's feeling like. It's a complete surrender energy for you, which is absolutely gorgeous. This reading is so lovely. I'm going to end it there. I also decided to pull a Moonology card for you, group 1. So the card that you have is Have Faith in Your Dreams, the Waxing Crescent Moon. If this message resonated with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment. If you're interested in personal readings, I'm having a sale on personal readings right now until the 19th. So if you're interested, check the description box for more information. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great week. Bye. Hi, group 2. Let's get started with your reading. It's a really interesting one. So we're going to start off here with the red and white rose, which I love so much. It's such a positive energy, but it was coming through with a little bit differently than it normally does. I was really drawn to sort of one line in the guidebook that was talking about like a very physical expression of a spiritual phenomena, if that makes sense. So something very physical, like a I want to call it a symptom of some sort, but it doesn't have to necessarily have a negative connotation. Some sort of physical symptom is presenting to you that is revealing some sort of something spiritual, like a spiritual truth of some sort. And it's coming through with this energy, the sulfur, which is really interesting. So this card talks about the best medicine sometimes tastes the worst, that kind of energy. So it does feel like there will be some sort of challenge associated with this. But it's kind of feeling like there's something very important here for you to learn about this situation that I feel like, so the example that was coming through with this kind of dynamic is, again, like if you have any sort of like body, like symptoms within your body that are sort of manifesting, I want to say always, I don't want to like, don't quote me on that, but I feel like there's usually a spiritual cause for any sort of a spiritual cause for any sort of bodily symptom. For example, an example in my life is, I feel like I've talked about this before, but if you're new here, maybe you haven't heard it, is my eczema on my hands, right? So which to me is sort of like a recurring symptom that is caused from stress in specifically my boundary setting, right? So if I'm not setting very good boundaries between whatever, my significant relationships or even like my work-life balance, that kind of thing, I get like a flare-up of eczema on my hands. So as sort of like a physical symptom to indicate something that's out of balance within my energy or spirit, if that makes sense. So I feel like there's something like that happening for you this week, that there may be some sort of, I want to say physical symptom, whatever that is shining light on this something that is more spiritual based, which is really interesting. It kind of feels like that again, because it's talking about it, so it may be having to do with boundaries for you of some sort. But you have the Wheel of Fortune Wheel of Fortune card, the rotation card, which to me is talking about, I feel like this is happening because it's supposed to bring you into the next thing, right? It's kind of like there's perhaps a problem or something like that that's keeping you from moving to the next phase of your journey or whatever, like the next chapter. And it's kind of like this thing needs to be dealt with first before you can move on to the next thing or whatever it is. And what was at the bottom of the deck, just so interesting, is this reddening card. Because it's kind of like this, the red snake, right? There's something about, but again, here's okay. So for this card, the red and white rose, it talks about the fact that there's no bleeding in terms of like, if you were to put a red sock into, or like a red whatever into a load of white laundry, there would be a bleeding of the colors, right? Which is very not favorable. And I feel like that's what's happening. There's some sort of bleed through or some sort of energy, perhaps like energetically, that's sort of bleeding into your experience that you're not wanting, that you don't want there to be bleed through because whatever. And that might be manifesting as a physical symptom in your body of some sort. Or if it's not like your body, it could just be like in your environment, like your physical reality, like you're experiencing some sort of perhaps challenging event or something like that is revealing some sort of spiritual bleed through, if that makes sense. Okay, and then what's so interesting here is you have, so first of all, the moon and the 10 of Wands. So the moon talks about mystery, right? It's something that's not clear. I want to say that there's something that's not clear about, like, you're not seeing it clearly. And that's why it's sort of coming through in like the physical reality, that there's something not clear about this situation. And so what the next card out you have here is the Son of Swords, right? This is sort of this. So this is the Knight of Swords, but it's like getting right into this heavy burden kind of energy, right? It's like a truth that is incoming, and I want to say that it might be a bit challenging just because it's coming through with the moon energy, where there's been perhaps a lot of illusions or something like that, and it's kind of like this is coming in to sort of bring clarity into the situation, though I want to say that it's not going to be an easy sort of energy, if that makes sense. What's really interesting though is that underneath these two cards are the 2 of Lotuses and the 10 of Lotuses, which is the 2 of Cups and the 10 of Cups, which is really positive. So how I'm actually seeing this is kind of like, I feel like there's something like this is something that you're protecting, is kind of how this is feeling with the 2 of Cups and the 10 of Cups. So it could be a specific relationship or just like some thing or energy or situation or whatever it is, opportunity that you find a lot of emotional fulfillment in. And it's like, I feel like this energy coming out on top is almost like it's purposely shrouded in mystery, or it's purposely, it feels like an energy of protection, actually, is kind of how it's feeling. Protecting this because it's all of this bright, positive energy. And so if I'm phrasing it like that, it kind of feels like there's this energy is coming in almost as like, to disrupt that, right? To disrupt this positive energy. And I don't know how or what that means, but it's kind of like that. Well, the next card to come out is the Nine of Embers, which is this sort of like peak climactic moment, which can be very challenging. But again, because of this sulfur card, it's coming through as kind of like a geyser, right? There's a lot of built up pressure or energy in this situation already, is kind of how that's feeling. It's not something new, and it's not something that is like out of the norm, or it's not something unexpected, if that makes sense. This is all energy that's been building up for a long time, but I want to say that you were somehow not seeing it. And it's like it's gotten to the point now that it needs to be dealt with or something like that. And again, I don't want to like make, because I feel like it's not necessarily really negative, though it may feel like that. And I don't want to scare anyone, because it kind of feels like there's a lot of, it's providing clarity, actually. It's just providing clarity, because you have here the High Priestess next, which is your energy for sure. Like, whatever this thing is, whatever this uncomfortable energy is, it is turning you into the High Priestess, right? With the rotation card, because it's kind of like there's some sort of truth or understanding or like aha moment that reveals to you like what you weren't seeing, or it's perhaps like the key to unlocking some sort of mystery, maybe a key to unlocking some sort of mystery is how that's feeling. And that's what you're receiving. So this volcano energy could be like an aha moment, like I finally understand what the blockage perhaps was, or what the issue was, or what it is that I'm needing to change. Because it does feel like you are needing to make some sort of change or adjustment to this situation in order to move forward. Because again, the 10 of Wands is a burden, right? So or it's coming through as blockage today. So something's coming in to clear a blockage, perhaps surrounding a specific relationship of some sort. And then you have here the Composer, which I really love, because this talks about like being in tune with the universe. I want to say it's also like listening for the right cues now. I feel like you'll be able to, I want to say like you're learning some sort of like, I want to say language of the universe or something like that, because you're receiving the key. It's like or maybe it's like a key change or something like that. There's so much there that I can explore, but I'm going to just leave it like that. But anyways, and then you have here the Maze and the Infinite Path. So this is the Temperance card and this is the Sun, which is really interesting because it kind of feels like, I want to say is that now you kind of have to work your way out of this. Like perhaps there was kind of like you weren't seeing the way out of the maze. I want to say with the Infinite Paths though, it's kind of, and being the Sun card, it's like you absolutely are going to find yourself out of this maze, right? You're gonna find the way out. And then what's really interesting here is the Son of Wands. Because I'm seeing this is that whatever the bleed through energy is, right? Like whatever this like energy is that's perhaps, it's just, this is the unwelcome thing, right? Or perhaps this is a blockage of some sort. It's something that's like not desired by you, but there was some sort of, I was just looking at this wand as being sort of a false light. I don't know what that means. I don't know necessarily if it's referring to a person or whatever. It could be a situation, could even be, it could be anything, honestly. Something that was perhaps you thought was beneficial, but was actually causing some sort of blockage in some way, right? Like so I feel like this is being revealed as the cause or the source of the issue or whatever that is. And what I love here next is you have here the Son of Pentacles, right? Which is absolutely this sort of boundary establishing between you and whatever this false light energy is, right? It's because like you've identified the problem, right? And it could even be like your own behaviors or something like that, some sort of pattern of behavior perhaps that is keeping you blocked. And it's like you're identifying what that is and then like putting up a boundary. This card, and then also you have the Commander, which is emphasizing all of that, right? You're identifying the problem, whatever that is, and then putting up really strong boundaries with all this determination in order for this bleed through energy not to affect you or not to impact or add burden to your emotional fulfillment is kind of how this is feeling. So this is feeling very much like a protection energy or like boundary boundary establishing, something like that. But it may be uncomfortable at first is kind of how that's feeling. Just because it's like you're seeing something in a new way is kind of how that's feeling. So I'm going to leave the reading there, but I did pull a Moonology card. So yours is Expect Powerful Change, the New Moon Eclipse. All right, group 2, I'm going to end it there. If this message resonated with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment down below. If you're interested in a personal reading, I'm currently holding a sale until April 19th on all my personal readings. You can find all the details in the description box below. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great week. Bye. Hi group 3, welcome to your reading. I really love this one. We're actually starting off here with the Despicable Face, which is such an interesting card, because this is one of the more uncomfortable cards in this deck, but it kind of is coming through with a really lovely energy today, actually, is because it talks about things that we find shameful about ourselves, or things that we want to keep hidden, things that we don't want other people to know about or to witness, because it causes this energy of shame or embarrassment or whatever, very like low vibrational energies. But this card talks about like needing to bring those energies to the surface so that we can integrate them as part of ourselves. And this actually is what makes us unique and interesting and human, right? So it's kind of like laying down any sort of veil of perfectionism is what this is coming through, because there's no such thing as that, right? The fact that there may be something, a situation perhaps, or something where you're perhaps trying to frame it as being perfect or better than it is or whatever, but it's kind of like, I feel like whatever this situation is, it's wanting to be brought to the surface, because I actually feel like this is something that is necessary for whatever it is that you're manifesting, interestingly enough, right? It's like once this thing is revealed, it actually opens up a lot of new manifestations. It's what's coming through, which is really interesting. So then you have here the Sparks of Light, which talks about hope, right? So it's very much hope, but it's coming through with like this new beginning. But I want to say that it's all of this sort of integration, the integration of like whatever that sort of uncomfortable energy is. But it's kind of like, I want to say also, again, with that idea of perfectionism, right? With like these sharp lines. And then this one's kind of like all over the place. I want to say that that's what's being highlighted here, where it's kind of like the energy of this week perhaps is wanting you to explore more of the messiness, right? The parts of ourselves perhaps that we find to be messy, so to speak, right? Like the things that we want other people not to see about ourselves, which is really interesting, because the next card you have here is the Venus card, which I love. This one's so beautiful to me. The colors are so, I don't know, there's just something really awesome about these colors. And of course this talks about like pleasure, right? And desire and creativity, I want to say, because it could be something to do with like the thing about like guilty pleasures is kind of what's coming through, right? Perhaps there's something about like your guilty pleasure, something that you experience guilt about wanting or whatever, right? Is shifting, because that's sort of what makes you unique. Like if somebody, like the thing about guilty pleasures is kind of something like another person perhaps made you feel guilty or shameful for liking something, and that's really just not it keeps you held and contained, right? The veil of perfectionism, which is not, it's not realistic. And I feel like when you embrace this aspect of yourself, that's what makes you unique and human and interesting, is what this is feeling like. And at the bottom of the deck, which is the overall energy of this reading, is the Raven's Head, which is talking about a call. You are being called to, I want to say, explore or look at this aspect of yourself that you perhaps find like despicable, for lack of a better word. And I want to say that it could be experienced through like your dream state, right? Again, with that sort of like subconscious energy, there's something here that's being brought to the surface. I feel like you're going to be seeing sort of the sparks of that, like hints or signs or synchronicities that are trying to draw your attention to this, because I want to say that that's going to feel uncomfortable at first, but the best response to this despicable face energy is self-love. Absolutely, with the Venus card, of self-love, of remembering that aspect of yourself is what makes you interesting and human and unique, and to absolutely embrace that aspect. Another thing here with the copper, right? Because if you think of copper, how it naturally, when it's exposed to the elements, it turns like the green color, right? The patina, which is so interesting, because I want to say that, like, and that's a very desired characteristic of copper, right? It's why they, like, builders put it on roofs, because that green color is so appealing. But that's, if you think about like what that green color is, it's an oxide. It's actually a form of rust, right? So rust being the thing that's not desired, but is actually what makes copper unique out of all the metals. So I feel like that's sort of the reframing that's wanting to happen here, is that something that perhaps others, or like your perception is that others would find this aspect of yourself shameful or something like that. But for you, it's actually the thing that makes you stand out and makes you unique and makes you more beautiful, let's say, because of that thing. Okay, this reading's so beautiful. It's so lovely. Okay, so the cards that we have here are, I'm going to go through these first. So the Daughter of Cups, which is all of this sort of like timidness energy. And what's so interesting about these three cards in a row, the Eight of Wands and then the, what is this? The Six of Cups, is kind of like all of this rainbow energy, right? Because I feel like that's the thing that you are seeing as being something that is shameful or whatever, something that you're not wanting to see or others to see, something that you're trying to keep hidden for whatever reason. But that's the thing that is the rainbow energy, the thing that makes you unique and special, and whatever words you want to put on that. But it's kind of like this is, and that's what's wanting to be brought to the surface, because as you can see here with the Eight of Wands, this one talks to me about like your manifestations coming in, because it's kind of feeling like once that thing is acknowledged, I don't even want to say that you have to like tell the whole world about it, but it's kind of like acknowledging it within yourself, right? Like you loving that aspect about yourself is what transforms your manifestations, is kind of how that's feeling. Like that's the final piece that was needed in order for whatever manifestation it was to come in that was perhaps not arriving or whatever it is. And it's like that's the last piece, is to just accept and acknowledge that aspect of yourself that perhaps like you weren't wanting to acknowledge or something like that. Which is really interesting. It's the Seven of Lotuses here talks about like confusion. I want to say it's also this kind of energy, because I'm always drawn to the frogs. It's kind of an energy of hiding, right? Or staying under the surface in order to avoid whatever's going on outside. So it's kind of like, I want to say meeting up, or I'm seeing these as two aspects of yourself that have become separated in some way. So like rendezvousing with this energy, some aspect of yourself, and then bringing that up to the surface. And then the next card out here is you have the Weaver, which if you just look at these two cards, right? This card talks about manifestation. So it's like manifesting with every aspect of you, even the part that you thought was perhaps not worthy of being acknowledged, maybe. And then here, what you have next is the Romantic, which coming in with the Venus energy, it's all this energy of like, so it could have to do with like pleasure or romance of some sort, or relationships or something like that, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be like your relationship to the things or energies that you desire, perhaps, something like that. But then you have here the Four of Wands and the Ten of Pentacles, which I love, because this is all this, if you look at here, so many diamonds, right? So many diamonds here present in your reading today. The Four of Wands in this deck specifically talks about like a completion, right? Completing some sort of challenge. It's talking about a celebration as well. It's all this sort of like new hope energy. But what I love about these wands is that they are slightly imperfect, right? They're not like perfectly straight lines. They're not like I don't know, smooth maybe. There's a roughness about them that is what makes them what they are. And what I also love about this Ten of Pentacles. So first of all of this rainbow energy is surrounding you, right? So instead of it being sort of like this sort of timidness where it's like there's a bit of a hint of this rainbow energy, now that becomes almost like the main focus is kind of how this card is feeling like. Whatever this aspect was is now becoming the main focus, which I really love so much. And because it talks about like long-term abundance, it could even have to do with your manifestations coming in. But what's so interesting about this Ten of Pentacles is that the 10th pentacle is actually hidden on the inside of this middle one. If you can see that, it's so subtle because there's actually only 9 of the big pentacles and then that one pentacle's in the middle. So how this is feeling to me is that like, I feel like you don't necessarily have to, again, share whatever this is with the whole world, right? Because it is something that I feel like it is something that you can keep private, but at the same time, accepting it within yourself, putting that aspect within the center of what it is that you were creating, right? Because it's like, it's hidden still, or I want to say it's camouflage. It's more camouflaged, right? It's not necessarily out in the open, but it does dictate or affect everything around it is kind of how that's feeling. I hope that makes sense. So taking that aspect that was hidden and making it the center point where everything else, like in order for that energy, right, the thing that makes you unique to radiate out into all of your manifestations, if that makes sense. Okay. And then the next 2 cards here, you have the Peacock and the Soulmates, which is really interesting. The Peacock is talking about sort of like the entrance or the doorway between spiritual and physical, right? Which is really interesting because it kind of feels like spiritually, or just like I don't know how else to say that, energetically acknowledging this aspect of yourself, right, is enough to bring you into the next manifestation. It's not even like, I feel like it's not even saying that you have to share it openly with the whole world. Maybe just admitting it to yourself is enough. I don't know, maybe. But then you have here the Veil and the Cosmic Tree, which I love. This is the Star card and the Hermit. So I'm feeling very much that the spiritual acknowledgement of this aspect of self is enough in order to move you to the next phase, I want to say. With the Cosmic Tree, it talks about like being connected to the ancestors. And then you also have here the Seven of Swords, which is really interesting because this is the despicable face aspect, right? It's bringing this sword and actually making it a part of everything else that you've manifested. I'm actually going to leave the reading there because that's all I have to say about that situation. So I'm going to end it there. I did pull a Moonology card just to close it off. So it says, nothing is yet set in stone, the mutable moon. All right, group 3, if this message resonated with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment down below. If you're interested in a personal reading, I'm having a sale until April 19th, so you can find the details also in the description box below. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.